Good morning. On behalf of the Journal of Business and Technology Law, welcome to the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law. My name is Ashley Filona. I am the current Executive Symposium and Manuscripts Editor for JBTL. I'd like to thank you all for attending JBTL's 2018 Symposium, Virtual Legality. Today's event will feature a series of expert speakers who will examine virtual reality and augmented perception technologies. Our speakers will discuss and analyze where this technology stands today, where it is going, and how it does and will continue to fit into our legal landscape. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you all to the Dean of University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law, Dean Donald Tobin. Before his appointment as Dean of Maryland Carey Law, in 2014, Dean Tobin spent more than a decade at Ohio State's Moritz College of Law. There, he held an endowed professorship and served as an associate dean. He was also an appellate attorney in the tax division of the United States Justice Department and a law clerk to the Honorable Francis Murnahan, Jr. on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. Dean Tobin began his career on Capitol Hill, where he worked before, during, and after graduating magna cum laude and Order of the Coif from Georgetown University Law Center. Dean Tobin earned a BA in economics from Duke, and he is one of the country's leading experts on the intersection of tax law and campaign finance law. Now, please join me in welcoming Dean Donald Tobin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Ashley, and welcome everyone to the Journal of Business and Technology Law Spring Symposium, Virtual Legality. Yeah, you all. Thankfully, they don't put a black robe on me and you don't have to stand, so we're in good shape. If you're not a lawyer, that's not funny. I am always impressed at the topics that our students raise for their symposiums. They're always thoughtful and engaging, but this one is particularly thoughtful and engaging and really focuses on something that is cutting edge and new for us to explore today. And I really appreciate the students thinking about doing this in a combination of the technology people and the legal people. Today we're going to talk about virtual legality. Just out of interest for me, how many of you have experienced virtual or augmented reality? Wow, me, but that's terrific. That means it's making more of a progress than we thought. I had the privilege of doing so at a demonstration that Amitabh, Varshney did based on the work that they're doing in College Park. And as part of empowering the state, we're doing virtual reality work that's being combined with the computer science people who are doing the work with law, with policing. College Park is doing some work with implicit bias, and I know that that College Park is also working with shock trauma in the law school on ways in which we can integrate some of these virtual reality and augmented reality to help train people. So it's here to stay, and like most new technologies, virtual and augmented reality are quickly coming up against some legal realities. In this room, we have people who grew up with punch cards, and if you don't know what those were, those are little things you punch to get your data into the computer, and with computers the size of a room. And we have people who grew up today with computers on their wrists. The difference is incredible. And our children will be growing up in a world where literally their computer is all around them. So I want to thank the participants today. We have experts in both the legal aspects of augmented and virtual reality and the technical aspects. And we couldn't put on the great program we're going to put on today without your help, so thank you very much. Our keynote speaker today is Kosta Stojiljkovic, who's a partner at Wilkinson, Walsh, and Eskovitz, and is formerly an assistant U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia in the Financial Crimes and Public Corruption Unit, and notably a law clerk to the Honorable John Roberts during his final term on the Court of Appeals and his first term as Chief Justice. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your expertise with us in the law school community. I'd also like to especially thank Hillary Hansen, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight because she is accompanying our transactional law moot court team to the National Transactional Law Meet competition in New York today. And so it's a great reason for her to be missing us, but I know how much work she put in helping the students, as well as I want to thank Patricia Campbell and Kevin, too, who work as faculty advisors to the journal for all their efforts to help plan the symposium. And finally, a thank you to the 40 students who make up the staff of the Journal in Business Technology Law. Working for a law journal is not easy. It's definitely a major time commitment and something I know that you really put in a lot of work, and we appreciate your hard work in putting together this symposium. And as I always say, I love the fact that our students work to put together educational opportunities for themselves and for the community. So thank you to the students for thinking about this topic and sharing with us. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to a great day. Thank you all.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Elisa Zaddario. I am the incoming editor-in-chief for Volume 14 of the Maryland Journal of Business and Technology Law. And today's first panel on virtual legality is going to explore precisely what virtual reality and augmented reality are, what those technologies' uses are in the real world, and the directions in which those technologies might go in the future. I'm very, very pleased to introduce our moderator for this exciting panel today. This is third-year Maryland law student Neda Dadpey, and Neda is the current editor-in-chief of the Journal, and she takes particular interest in intellectual property. Neda graduated from Temple University with a degree in biochemistry, and she came to law school after several years working as a cancer research technician at Thomas Jefferson University. While here at Carey Law, Neda has developed work experience at the Maryland State Ethics Commission, the Federal Public Defender for the District of Maryland, and Cooper & Dunham LLP in New York City. Upon her graduation this year from Carey Law, Neda is going to head back to New York to begin her very exciting law career as an associate at Cooper & Dunham, and we are sure she will be a valued asset to the firm. So please join me in welcoming Neda Dadpey.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. To my left, we have Dr. Harry Kerasidis from Chesapeake Neurology Associates. Then we have Professor Amitabh Varshney from University of Maryland at College Park. And we have Mr. Will G. from Balti Virtual. And Professor Varshney, I believe you're starting us off.
Right, great. So it's a real pleasure to be here. And let me just see if I can flick this in the right direction. Great. So what I'll do is give you a little bit of a background of where we are coming from in virtual and augmented reality. So since the time we are born, all of our perception of the world around us is through our senses. Now imagine a situation where all of this sensory information could be mediated, transformed, manipulated, and changed by a computer. What kind of a world would that be? How would we then experience the world? Would it seem as real as this world, or would it be a different one? And if it is a different one, how can we use that in a productive way? More than 50 years ago, going back to the era of the punch cards, is when Ivan Sutherland came up with this idea of the ultimate display. And his idea was, do not look at the display of a computer monitor as a display of a computer monitor. Instead, look at it, imagine that this was a window into a virtual world. And our challenge is to make that virtual world look real, feel real, sound real, and act real. Right now, we are still at the looking real, sounding real part. The feeling and the acting is still some ways off. So this was in his 1969 address to the IFIP conference. And at that point, he also did say, in such a world, a chair displayed would be good enough to sit in, and a bullet displayed would be fatal. And then you wonder, where do these movie guys get their ideas from? In some ways, this whole evolution of virtual and augmented reality that we are witnessing today is a very natural evolution of the mass market in media. So we started from the printing press, and we kept going from recordings to the radios, to the television, to the internet. Each time you go further to the right in this evolution, there is a greater democratization of information access, and the information itself becomes multisensory, multimodal. At the very extreme, that is not on this chart, but will be upon us soon, we will be subsumed by information all around us. In an ideal virtual augmented reality scenario, this information that is computer generated will be indistinguishable from the real world. And that is where we are all headed. Now, in the middle, of course, we will have a lot of pauses, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. One of the examples is the information. You're walking down the street, and all the information of where are the various landmarks is all overlaid. One of the things that is driving a lot of the computing revolution is persuading you to buy things you don't need. And that is going to be really powerful in this medium. So right here is your coffee shop, your advertisement space. This advertisement space, right now you have county laws governing all advertising, or state laws. What kind of laws would govern the display of material in these virtual worlds? Are they now controlled by the app manufacturer, or the headset manufacturer, or the autonomous self-driving car manufacturer, whose display screens these will be located on? So one of the things that is very important for us to know is to try and distinguish the hype from the hope. There is a lot of hype right now around virtual augmented reality, but there's also hope. One of these is the power of immersion. Can we do something better in immersion? So this was a question that was asked by Randy Pausch. You might have heard of him as the author of the last lecture. This was way back in '97, about 20 years ago. And the question was, if I give you a virtual room full of letters, in one experimental condition, you are looking at the virtual room and navigating it on a desktop. In the other experimental condition, you are wearing a head-mounted display and looking around. And I say, find me this letter. Let's say the letter R. How long does it take you to find it? Well, it turns out if the letter R is present in the room, there was no statistical difference between the two modalities. However, if the letter was not present, people using the headset reached the conclusion faster that it was not present than people who were on the desktop. Here's another example. This was an experiment run by Fred Brooks, Mary Witten at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 2001. This was walking over the ledge. Here is the experimental condition. A person wearing the head-mounted display is put on a 1-inch high block of wood. Here's the carpet. When they wear the headset, they know they are in the lab. They know this plank is 1 inch high. And they wear the headset, and then they are asked to step over. Their blood heart rate goes up. The skin conductance, which is the perspiration on the hands, goes up. Their breathing rate goes up. What is going on? Your mind is telling you, yeah, sure, go ahead, step over the ledge. And your eyes are telling you, do not do this, you are crazy. It is amazing. There is such a huge power in this medium that you do not get from other conventional media that we have right now. That said, there are a lot of challenges that need to be overcome before it becomes a truly immersive commodity experience. The first one is the weight of the display. The field of view. Right now we have about 170-degree field of view. These ones typically have about 110 right now. And if you look at the HoloLens, it's about 60 or so. It's even more postage size. When you are walking around, you go to a party, you wanted to look at, you meet so many people, you forget their names. What if their names are floating above their heads? Well, the names have to be registered to the person, aligned to the person. You don't want the wrong name floating over somebody's head. That alignment of the virtual and the real worlds has to be very precise, and that needs a lot of research. The mixing of the virtual and the real worlds have to be really pitch perfect. Like I said, you do not want to be able to know if an object is virtual or real, they should look alike. What that also means is that the lighting of the real world should light the virtual objects with the shadows and the reflections. It's an interesting problem. And then, of course, there's a challenge of visual attention management. It is so easy to get distracted, and that's what all the advertisers are counting on. And finally, there's a problem of the divergence accommodation mismatch, which almost all the headsets today suffer from. And the problem is, when you look at something close, two things happen. Your eyeballs swivel, and the lenses are compressed to reduce the focal length. And when you look far, your eyeballs become parallel, and the lenses relax. That does not happen inside of headset right now because you're at a fixed distance from the display. And that's why a lot of people suffer from nausea and headaches. Here are some of the fundamental research topics that I am personally very interested in. One is the cinematic quality rendering of the light field. A light field is all the light that is running around, bouncing around in this room. The second is, how can you track outdoors with a very high quality? And you need vision-based tracking. And there's research going on that. Augmented reality registration, I just talked about, alignment of the real and the virtual. And finally, generating displays that mimic the true natural to senses way in which we perceive the real world around us. Where would all this be used? In our research with the Shock Trauma Center here at University of Maryland, Baltimore, one of the applications is immersive surgery. Cameras are cheap. The camera on my cell phone is about $2 cost. You can have a whole array of cameras. It would be nothing. The challenge is in fusion of this data. But if you can fuse this data well and stream it on the next generation internet pipes, you can bring telepresence to hard-to-reach rural areas, and on the other flip side, you can bring in the world's foremost medical experts to come in and weigh in on any surgery anywhere in the world. That is a remarkable advance. You can have collaboration. Right now, anytime you have a disaster relief scenario or a counterterrorism scenario, there's a fog of lack of information. These kinds of technologies can clear that up. Here is an example of how we are working on augmented reality with the Shock Trauma Center.
As a trauma surgeon, I see sick and dying people every day. One of the problems with ultrasound imaging is that you have to look away from the patient to see the images. That makes procedures harder to do. So if you can keep looking at the patient and still see the images of the patient, that could fundamentally change medicine.
We are very fortunate that we were able to establish this collaboration with the University of Maryland at Baltimore. We started working with Dr. Sarah Murthy on how augmented reality could help in overlaying real-time ultrasound imagery on the patients so that the physicians could see the ultrasound imagery that they're acquiring. The HoloLens allows the projection of computer-generated imagery on top of the real world.
Right now, to do point-of-care ultrasound, you have to use both your hands for the imaging, but with the display on your face, it frees up one hand. And so it will just make point-of-care ultrasound even easier and faster. There is no part of medicine that won't potentially benefit from this because it brings diagnostic imaging to wherever the patient is, whether that's in a battlefield or in an ambulance or in the hospital.
This is finally taking us beyond where we would be sitting in our lab, writing programs, and taking us out into the field, helping save human lives. So we have talked about cinematic quality virtual reality. We are working on camera arrays that can image a person from different directions, fuse that, so that this virtual person would be full 360. And right now, when you go watch a movie, the movie is playing on the screen. You are out. This will allow you to step into that cinematic quality experience. We could watch somebody from any direction. We are also looking at using this for anatomy education. Right now, you have anatomy textbooks, which are beautifully colored, beautifully shaded, different parts of the body, and then you open up a corpse or a live person, and all the organs look alike. Having that kind of a immersive experience would do amazing for the quality of medical education. We are also looking into non-opioid pain management. It turns out the same pathways, the same neural pathways that are responsible for somebody perceiving pain are also the pathways through which visual distraction works. If you are visually distracted, you will not perceive as much pain. This is joint work with Professors Luana Koloka in the School of Nursing here and Professor Sarah Murthy at the Shock Trauma Center. And finally, we are working with the University of Maryland Sociology Department at College Park and the Prince George's County Police on characterizing, combating implicit bias. 1,800 Prince George's County Police officers are currently going into this implicit bias training, where they are being faced with multiple scenarios. In some cases, you have people coming, just walking around. Suspicious person has been reported. It could be a black, white, Asian, Latino, male or female. They might or might not have a knife, a gun, or a candy. How would you react? And how fast would you react? We are measuring their heart rate. We are measuring their gaze direction. We are measuring their breathing rate to look at how are people reacting differently. The goal is not to say somebody is implicitly biased or not. We all are. The goal is to help people place themselves into each other's shoes to help bridge these community divides that are wrecking our communities right now. And finally, as closing remarks, there is this notion in philosophy of qualia. Qualia is a plural, qualia is a singular. And this is supposed to be the subjective experience detached from all the conditions of the experience. Do you remember the time when you first welcomed a pet into your home as a kid? What was that like? What was the feeling you had at that time? Do you remember the time when somebody looked up to you as a hero for doing something? What was that feeling like? That feeling detached from all sensory perception. As the cinematic quality, as the photorealistic quality of the medium improves, that feeling becomes more dominant. You don't have that feeling as strongly in a painting as you have in an appropriately captured photograph, and it is even more powerful when you look at it in an immersive setting. It's more instantaneous. Movies are supposed to bring those feelings. The immersive media would be even more powerful. So with that, one of the things we need to do is to develop these tools for virtual and augmented reality and co-develop them with the target applications. Entertainment is one application, but there are so many other applications in public safety, in implicit bias, in education, in medicine, where we can leverage the cognitive and perceptual powers of the human so that we are more effective at using the powers of the computers to help us do our jobs. It's going to be very exciting times ahead. Thank you.
Dr. Kerasidis, I believe you're next.
Hi, all. Thank you for attending and inviting me to participate in this conference. It's very exciting to be here, and the topics are really, really exciting, of great interest to me. My name is Harry Kerasidis. I'm a neurologist in private practice in Southern Maryland. My area of expertise in neurology is in cognitive and behavioral neurology. And my first thought when I was invited to be on this panel was, why? And then I thought, well, probably it's because in part of my career and currently I'm a pioneer in applying the technology of virtual reality into practice of assessing brain function in potentially injured athletes. And then I thought, no, it's probably because my daughter graduated from this school last year. But then I thought, okay, no, it's probably the first thing, right? So yes, that has been a passion of mine for probably the last 7 years in applying virtual reality technology into brain assessment. I've always been kind of a techie guy, a technology early adopter, and so my integration of this embracement of technology into what I have learned to assess the neurologic condition of individuals is kind of a unique blend. When I was about 12 years old, I had a book of optical illusions, right? And I loved that book. I would look at all the pictures, and they would have like 2 bars, and they would be on a background of slanted lines, and you'd look at them, and one bar looked larger than the other. And I always thought about the illusionist, the person that was presenting the illusion, as being a real trickster. He's going, ha ha, no, they're really the same size. Or 2 panels that were on the sides of what looked like a Rubik's Cube, and because of the shadowing, the one on the top looks lighter in color than the one on the side, but again, that trickster would say, no, it wasn't, they're actually the same color, and you can prove it to yourself. Well, virtual reality is actually the extension of this optical illusion, almost the ultimate optical illusion. And because in reality, what you're looking at is a screen that's only about 3 inches away from your eyeballs. And yet, when you're immersed in the experience, you believe that you are transported to somewhere else, a virtual reality that can be of only limited by the human imagination. And you truly believe that you're there. As in Professor Varshney's example of the ledge, you get really apprehensive about stepping off that ledge when you're looking down and the floor is about 30 feet below you. So how does that work? Well, the illusion is actually based on 2 phenomena. One is the 360-degree image. How many people here are familiar with 360-degree photos where you can take your, so there's quite a few people. So a 360 photo is taken like with a camera that looks like this. It has 2 sides to it. There are 2 cameras, and their lenses are like extreme wide angle, like totally fisheye type of imaging. And they take the pictures simultaneously, and then software stitches those pictures together, right? So when that is put into some kind of a viewer, you can inspect this picture, for instance, with your phone, by holding the phone out and inspecting portions of that. Oh, my phone is ringing. No, they'll have to wait. Portions of that picture by turning around raising up and down, and the accelerometer technology and other technologies that can gather data about how the phone is oriented in space and how it's moving in space allows you to look at this picture as if it was surrounding you. And the extreme of that is to put the phone into the goggles, and now you're inspecting that picture from all different angles, because the accelerometer technology in the phone actually will will allow you to look at the parts of the picture based on how the phone is moving in space. The big difference between this and this is that you are immersed in the environment. And when you look up, you're looking up at the sky. When you look down, you can look down at the ground. And that gives you the illusion of being transported into a virtual environment. The other element of the illusion, the optical illusion, is stereoscopic vision. Okay? So we have depth perception because our eyes are set apart from each other, and yet the brain can fuse the images from the two different eyes to determine what the object looks like and how far it is from you, and give it a three-dimensional type of depth. So depth perception. And so this adds to that optical illusion of a three-dimensional virtual environment that you're transported in when you're wearing goggles like this. So my recent activities professionally have been in the development and the application of technology to assess brain function in potentially injured athletes, basically to identify concussion in a person that might have taken a really bad hit. And we use a variety of different technologies to do that, including computerized assessments of memory and thinking. And one of the technologies that we applied was a balance test. And the balance test, you can actually download it for free. It's XLNT Brain. Excellent Brain is the name of the app. And it's on Google Play or the App Store. And this balance test actually leverages the accelerometer data gathering while the person is trying to balance in a certain position. So the person is stepping with one foot in front of the other, standing, holding the phone at their side. And if they're making a lot of movements to compensate for imbalance, then the accelerometers pick that up and read it, and so you can determine whether the person is well balanced or not. It's a great, fun app after a party. But my interest in the VR application actually was to take this and put it into VR technology. And so, and that was a really opportune time because, you know, with the application of and the development of using smartphones into the goggles, we didn't have to have all those, you know, computers, laptops, all that gear that you saw in the picture that was sort of identifying where the person was in space. Now you can have all that data crunched into the processor of a cell phone, and it's now in the goggles. So now I can use the accelerometer technology to measure the balance while the person is wearing the goggles and they're in a virtual environment. So what happens is the person that is wearing it is transported to an environment where they're standing in the middle of a football field, stadium. You know, you can look up and you can see all the bleachers and things like that. And the instructions are basically maintain your balance with one foot in front of the other while you pick a point to look at in front of you. And at first, that point, your virtual environment is true to your real horizon, right? So if you were to lean this way or this way, your virtual world will compensate for those movements. And you maintain balance, and we collect the accelerometer data for only 20 seconds. So within 20 seconds, we can determine whether a person is stable or not. Then we put a second condition in, and the second condition is one in which the whole stadium starts to rock slowly, one side to the other. And now your reality, you have to make that choice between your visual reality and what your body is telling you about proprioceptive sense, what your position, your joints and your muscle tension and things like that, and also your inner ear, because your inner ear is important in the balance method, or the balance function as well. So, but now you're getting conflicting data from your vision. You have to be able to suppress that, that information that's coming in visually versus the information that's coming in elsewhere. So it's really hard to maintain balance in that scenario. Also a fun game after a party. So we applied that and we developed that test. And that was part of the Excellent Brain program. But as that developed, we realized that there were so many other applications of virtual reality and leveraging the optical illusion to assess brain function as an assessment tool. So we embarked on the second part of the app, which is what we call convergence testing. And Professor Varshney had touched upon this somewhat in his talk. Convergence basically is the phenomena where your eyes actually come closer together to maintain fusion, maintain that single image as the object is approaching you. And you can all do this yourselves. You can hold your finger out in front of you. You can look at your finger, and as you bring your finger closer and closer and closer, you're able to maintain that single finger vision until you reach a certain point. And then once you reach that point, you can no longer bring your eyes together any further. And after you cross that point, your finger looks double. You see two fingers. Well, it turns out that in acute concussion, about 50% of brain-injured individuals will not be able to converge normally after injury. So we thought that this would be a good opportunity to apply this to virtual reality technology. And here's where I differ from Professor Varshney in the sense that, at least in the Gear VR goggle set, although you do have a fixed vision, there is elements of depth perception and the ability to converge and maintain a particular single image. And so we developed a virtual environment. When you're in the environment, you look like you're sitting in an exam room, a doctor's exam room. And there's this wand that's floating in space in front of you. And you focus on the wand. And as the test proceeds, the wand starts moving closer to you. And you keep on maintaining that vision until you can no longer see just one wand. The vergence and the images become unfused, and you see two. And at that point, we can actually measure the virtual distance that this object is. And in fact, it mirrors true vergence very closely. I mean, within about half a centimeter difference as the virtual versus the real vergence. And so we've applied this technology to assess potentially brain-injured individuals. And because of this opportunity, we actually developed a new company, and that's called NeuroVR. And NeuroVR owns the patent to this technology, so we had to work with a patent attorney. And here's where there's a connection with law, and what I was told is, I said, when I was invited to do this, I said, I don't know anything about law, so why am I talking? And I was reassured that you guys would figure it out later today, right? But this is one connection, is working with a patent attorney, and our patent attorney was an engineer prior to going to law school and becoming a patent attorney. And so as he's working with us to develop the patent, he's getting all excited about it. He's, oh yeah, well we can do this and we can do that, and he's actually starting to participate in the actual development of the product. And we say, well, leave us to do that. You take care of the legal stuff. But we've identified a lot of potential in being able to assess not only the visual system and the balance system, but also even other phenomena, more cognitively sophisticated phenomenon like directed attention, like memory, orientation, and things like that. And all of that is going to be applied into a single app, if you will, a single program that will be portable and available at the sideline or in the locker room or in the doctor's office to assess not only potentially injured athletes, but really applied to all sorts of other medical scenarios. So it's a very exciting project. It really gets you, it provokes a lot of philosophic thinking about how the virtual environment is applied in these different scenarios. So as part of what I was asked to comment on was my vision for where is this kind of technology going in the future, and Professor Varshney had very well sort of organized some of the applications that are really not only possible and in the near future, but actually happening today. And you can divide it into areas of education, and one of the applications that Professor Varshney had mentioned was the ability to, let's say, learn anatomy. And you can use the virtual environment to actually look at different anatomical structures and their relationship to each other from different points of view, from an external point of view, from an internal point of view. You can actually be anywhere within the body and look at the anatomical structure. You can actually make yourself tiny and look inside. In fact, actually, there is a company that's called BrainMaster. They do EEG brain mapping, and they've developed a way to map the electrical source of the electrical activity of the brain in three-dimensional space. So they have a three-dimensional image of the brain, and you can see where the brain activity is coming from. And so as a kind of a fun project, what they did was they developed a VR access to this three-dimensional image. So you can now have sensors on your head measuring the electrical rhythms of your brain, wearing VR goggles, and your perception is that you're inside your own brain watching the electrical activity that's happening, right? And it's kind of mind-boggling. So education, learning anatomy, learning, another application for education is, for instance, having these cameras. Now, this will also record video. Another one of the biggest optical illusions that we are exposed to almost every day. When you're watching a TV or you're watching a movie, you're convinced that you're watching moving images, but no, that's not really what you're watching. You're watching a series of static images that are presented so fast that you can't tell that they're different images. They're actually happening one right after the other and making an appearance, an illusion of movement. And so that's video. So these can record video. So one day I had this, and we had a conference, and we were in my conference room. I said, I want to record this. So I placed it right in the middle here, and I set it on video, and we had our conference. And then I reviewed it afterwards, just to see what it was like. Well, first of all, my point of view was as if I was about 3 inches tall, standing in the middle of the table and looking around, and I could see everybody around me at the conference. But the intense immersion and the convincing illusion of the fact that you are actually there is just amazing. So, and one of the weird thing is if you turn and look and you actually see yourself right next to you and talking and whatnot. So, but I can imagine in the future that these cameras could be set up, one in each of your little places there, and you can be in your own home with the virtual reality goggles, and you are transported right here into this auditorium listening to the speaker as if you were actually here. And with this sophisticated imaging, this 360 imaging that was described, you can in fact look around you and see your neighbors as they really are, right? And so the ability to conduct not only education like lectures or maybe even being able to participate in conferences or business meetings and things like that will be phenomenally facilitated, because there's really nothing better than an interaction face-to-face, right? Doing it on call or doing an online meeting, that really doesn't substitute. But with a virtual environment, then we're talking about something that may in fact actually be almost as real as the physical contact. So I'm going to wrap it up there and allow our next speaker to talk.
One second, I just have to set up this other projection system. Yeah, by way of introduction, I'm Will G., founder and CEO of Balti Virtual. We're a software company that's located just south of here in Port Covington. And our focus is 100% on building VR and AR experiences. What I want to do is talk a little bit about some of the things that we built, some of the things that we're excited about moving forward, and then give you a quick demo of some of our work. So we do a lot of work along the lines of what Amitabh described as selling people things. You know, we do a lot of advertising stuff. We do a lot of entertainment. But yeah, we grew out of the local video game industry, dating back to kind of the late 90s. And what we do is we build VR and AR experiences using video game technology. We're really excited about the future of mixed reality, things placed all over the world, people wearing AR headsets and that type of thing. We've got Shaq wearing the Magic Leap. We're not as excited about that as he is, but we're still very excited. And I mean, right now you kind of look at this first generation of headsets. They sort of look kind of strange. They look a little odd. I imagine 30 years ago, it would probably look strange to have people walking around with white AirPods, you know, hanging out of their ears. So these kind of things begin to normalize over time, especially as the form factor changes. We're not excited about the way they look so much as the experiences that you can have within them. And again, touching on some of the things that Amitabh said, where you can reach out and kind of interact with virtual objects as if they're real, is an amazingly powerful feeling. And it's also just a ridiculously expressive user interface. So if you want to, you're holding a 3D model of an apartment project that you're building, and you want to see
what's on the third floor apartment. You can just kind of grab it, pull it up, turn it. It's very futuristic feeling, but it's also very natural. It's the way that we've been interacting with the natural world for thousands or billions of years. And rather than point, click, file, open, view, side, that kind of thing. So we're really excited about the future of AR headsets. Unfortunately, we are a company that has to generate profit today. And so what we do is we build a lot of experiences for the mixed reality devices that everyone carries around with them at all times, mobile phones. Might be familiar with Pokemon Go. That was kind of one of the real ambassadors of AR to the wider world. Phones are great. I mean, again, everyone's got them. You can walk around with them. They're amazingly portable. They're not at all intimidating. You don't have to wear Shaq's crazy headset, and you can have these great experiences. The downside is it's almost like there's a magical world all around us of digital information, and we only have a little magnifying glass where we can kind of look at little pieces here and there rather than being fully immersed and being able to see it naturally. Another sort of side effect of this approach is that you lose all of the amazing expressive user interface things where you have both hands free. Instead, you're just kind of using one hand to hold the device and you tapping, swiping, kind of the typical things. So anyway, on to some of the things that we've built. When we started our company in 2015, AR was not a widely understood topic. And so we created sort of a fun application to explain it to people, and that was in the form of something we called holotats. These are temporary tattoos that you stick on and download a free app and scan and kind of experience what's called image-based augmented reality. I'm going to demo that live in a second, but this is the experience as seen by my niece. Oop. Let's see. So yeah, the idea of seeing something that's not physically there is fairly magical, and it creates a pretty good impression, especially on younger folks. Again, we're down in Port Covington. That's kind of Under Armour territory. They very quickly came to us and said, hey, this tattoo thing you're doing, how can we apply it to something more interesting? And that started a collaboration with them where we built an app that was around bringing people back to brick and mortar retail. So again, selling them things. But in kind of an interesting way, what we did is we launched an app in their Disney store that was focused on 6 signature athletes, Steph Curry, Misty Copeland, The Rock, that was pretty awesome, Tom Brady, Cam Newton, a bunch of them. And what the experience was there were a bunch of shoe pedestals around the store, and you download this app, or an associate would hand you an iPad with it preloaded, and you could walk up and scan them and see them sort of come to life in this same kind of magical action figures sort of fun way. Here's a video of what that looked like. And again, you're scanning, these characters are just kind of populating the store. Here's the Rock's shoe. He comes out, does some push-ups, obviously. Flexes. But again, this is mixing virtual and physical objects, creating another layer around what's actually there. And what's exciting is thinking about taking this to the next level, where you can actually customize the content based on the user's interests, based on something that would personally engage them. Or like if you're a golfer, the whole store should be about golf. You're not so much interested in basketball or running or those types of things. So we've worked with a bunch of brands, and I'm going to show off some of those experiences right now. So live demos are always a challenging undertaking. Let's all keep our fingers crossed. So, let's see. So this is our app. It is called Apparate. get it going. And there we are. The way it works is it's kind of just like Snapchat or whatever you're familiar with. And the way it works is it's constantly looking for different images that we've programmed in. And when it finds one of those images, it goes to our server and pulls down content specific for that. So for instance, here's our dolphin tattoo. So you can see this. Very quickly we started working on advertising campaigns. Here's a virtual or augmented Oreo cookie. And again, it's just another form of media. Hidden Valley Ranch, why not? SeaWorld, we did a whole campaign with them around ocean explorers. I guess the virtual killer whales still all right. Here are some Lucky Charms. And again, you get the idea. It's kind of a completely natural way of interacting with any kind of content. Oops. So you can turn this around. You can see this minion from any angle. It's almost as if I've got him kind of plugged on the page right here. There you can see. Obviously, hometown favorite. This is a project we did with, snap it quick. Save that. He's also got his Curry Under Armour sneakers on, so he's fully equipped. This is actually a kind of a fun ad campaign we did for Liberty Tax. It's sort of bringing a magazine page to life. So again, think about this hidden digital layer of everything.
I see you looking at me there, citizen. Got a thing for presidents, do you?
And he goes on to say, kind of this like, call your bestie, and he pops up a link where you can click and immediately engage. So again, it's adding a digital layer to things where, click here, and then that'll launch you to a website, that kind of thing. We've also found that this technology is very good for explaining complex objects. So this is a job that we did for Kawasaki. They've got this lawnmower engine that they were very proud of. I don't totally understand lawnmower engines, but apparently it's something about the way that it draws grass in through this, mechanism. We've completely modeled this whole thing. You can kind of fly through it, look at it from any angle. But again, the idea of, well, I want to see the other side of the lawnmower engine. Okay, just move over there and look at it. So it's a completely natural way of interacting with virtual objects. Another place where we've had a lot of interest is in real estate. So, they used to have those kind of tabletop models that you'd build for months and months and carry around, and then they get dusty. What we have is this sort of virtual version that can come out of any page, and it's got some really nice features. You can tap to zoom in, see detail in any place. You can see the difference between night and day lighting. It can constantly update. That's one of the nice things. These books can be out in the wild, and they can change something about how this project should work, and we can instantly update it. So the next time you scan it, you see something new. This is some work we did with Under Armour around designing a store layout for Dick's Sporting Goods. So you can see this kind of map. They basically sent this to Dick's Sporting Goods and said, this is what we want to do with our layout. What are your thoughts? Can you mark up, well, we want this display unit to have less shirts or things like that. And if you can imagine this sort of alternative for how to do this, it's about 47 pages of PowerPoint of view 1 from this angle, view 2, where this you can just sort of move around naturally. Quickly, a couple of last demos. We're starting to get more and more into interactive content. And again, you're sort of limited by the fact that you're just touching in 2 dimensions on a screen, but when this moves to glasses and being able to reach out and touch things, it's going to become really magical. But let's see if I can. Oh. That is my Chariots of Fire. And let's see, finally, one second. The piano does not seem to want to go away. Give me 1 second. But yeah, I mean, you get sort of the idea of where we're going with this. There's a lot of potential, and we've got a couple little last things, and then we'll jump into the conversation. One of the things we really had a lot of fun with was we partnered up with Sylvan Learning. Let's give it another second and see if it'll find the source. There we go. This is kind of a fun one and semi-embarrassing, so always a good demo. This is a fractions game that we built with Sylvan, and it asks you to slide this slider on the screen to where you think 1/5 is, or any other number of fractions that they throw out. And I don't know, I could do like an up or down kind of thing. Oh, did pretty well on that one. I should probably quit 1 out of 1. We'll do 1, ooh, 4/7. No, that was terrible. So yeah, that's the idea though, creating kind of a tabletop, engaging AR experience for kids and letting it customize. Again, the same idea what you're using in retail to customize to someone's interest, you could customize to someone's skill level with fractions or things like that. The last demo is this little game we built for the Olympics. This just kind of showcases our ability to stream interactive content over the air without updating our app. So it's kind of a fun feature. Oh, did not time that well. But again, you know, all this type of content is just going to be living kind of everywhere. And finally, this is some work we did for Marvel because Marvel is pretty cool. Let's see, this is Captain America. These were actually wall decals, so they're sort of like the fathead type of things where a kid would put this on his wall, and then Captain America would show up and save the day. And the last one is Baby Groot. So yeah, those are some examples of kind of how AR works today. It's going to get a lot more interesting when it's head worn, obviously, and hopefully we'll touch on some of those things very, very shortly. So thanks for your time.
So at this time, I'd like to open up the floor for questions. Sure. I think we're going to get you a microphone. I'll pass down the microphone.
Thank you all very, very much. I guess my first, I have a two-parter. One is for Will. How do you, at this point you've got already a really great national client base, but like you said, because we don't have worn headsets, you've got this extra step where if you want to interact with your experiences, you take out the phone and you have to make the choice to take out the phone and take out the app. How do you see the changing technologies interacting with your changing kind of consumer strategies? And then my second question is for the panel, how do we consider privacy in the age of these augmented reality technologies becoming more ubiquitous? Thank you very much.
I think the privacy question is really fascinating, but I'll touch on the changing business model. I think the change is going to be that people will have to opt in to experiences a little bit more. I mean, if you're walking around all day with glasses, you don't want to be just bombarded constantly. There's a great video called Hyperreality that is sort of the dystopian look of what AR could look like. It's just basically the entire world is just a banner ad where you can see about this big. And so right now, the fact that you have to take an app out and actually choose to engage with that content creates a nice point of differentiation where you're kind of opting in. I think what's going to have to change will be some sort of, all right, what news feed do I want on my homepage of my AR glasses, as it were? I don't want to have anything, or I just want to see sports news, or I just want to see, whatever you're interested in, I guess. But as far privacy, though, is, I mean, especially with the fact that the companies that are driving this are effectively Google, Facebook, Apple to a lesser extent, Microsoft. Those companies are definitely very interested in the data that's being generated. And there are some kind of, I don't know, there's some scary things that are happening coming up. I don't mean to be alarmist, but there are some of the technology that's going to be embedded in the next generation of headsets to enable features like higher quality visuals will be things like cameras that track where your eyes are looking. And part of that is because our visual system is only really very good in a small area. And so right now with VR, we're wasting a huge amount of computing overhead drawing all of the things that you're not looking at or you're just sort of seeing as a blur in your peripheral vision. And so the next generation is going to use what's called foveated rendering to track where your eyes are and only update that component, which is a great technological thing. The privacy issue of what you're looking at moment to moment is obviously a little scary. So that's going to have to be managed.
Any other?
What are your thoughts on what the next generation of viewers' glasses might look like, and would they account for differences in age and sex for how people see and process?
I think there's going to be Ferragamo glasses for sure. Sort of designer glasses that look good and are functional.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be very challenging. So one of the challenges, and so going back to one of the things Harry was saying about the divergence accommodation, there are two parts. One is, can your eyes converge? And the other is, can they also change the focal length as they converge? The problem in the headsets today is that the divergence happens, but the accommodation is fixed. And that mismatch is what is causing headaches. And that is the reason why when Sony came out with its stereoscopic, glasses-free stereoscopic display, it said kids 6 and under cannot use it. Because if they get too into it, it damages their vision because of this divergence accommodation mismatch. So these headsets have to also be cognizant of the age of the users who are using it. One of the things that Will said was very appropriate. Just based on where this technology is headed, we will need a significantly higher display resolution than what is available today. The battery, the power consumption for such a high resolution display is simply not possible, no matter how good the batteries get. So foveated vision, where you have much higher resolution where you're looking, is bound to happen. But that also means you need the extra hardware to track where you're looking at. But one of the challenges that will happen when that kind of a technology becomes available is you will need to get closer and closer to not just the eyeballs, but the pupils of the eyes. You need to track where the pupils are, and that's where you will target all the light rays going in to have a retinal, high-resolution retinal display. Some of the challenges that would happen naturally with a technology like this is, are we going towards a contact lens kind of a solution? There are already contact lenses which can do the processing for diabetic patients to know whether they are diabetic or not by having this be right on the eyes. Is that something that this is heading towards? Till the time that happens, I am reminded of one of the things Will had said a couple of days ago. The best VR, AR display is the one that is on you. And so for the foreseeable future, I think the smartphones are going to be the display. There are already, if you go to, if you search for HoloKit, HOLOKIT, it's a Google Cardboard-like device for the augmented reality glasses you can have and look around you. So there are these intermediate points. But there's no doubt that in the next few years, there'll be huge advances in the displays. But eventually, they should become commoditized just like the television sets today are. The real technology is going to be content and applications and services. So that's where I think the real future should be going.
Any other questions? Oh, yes.
How much time do you have?
We have about another 10 minutes or so, so please feel free.
Okay, so I've got two. I'll only ask one. The first one, just want to see how I can benefit myself. So, you mentioned, Professor Varshney, you mentioned that one of the things that you'll need for mixed reality is these really, I guess, intensive graphics processors and things like that. So that, along with what you see is going to happen in the future, or what you think is going to happen in the future. So, what types of companies should I be investing in now? Like, how am I going to make my millions?
Invest in this guy's company.
Yeah.
And in Neurovia.
So there's, that for sure, right? But so like graphics cards, right? If you're going to need high graphics cards, maybe it's like NVIDIA, Micron, Intel, something like that. So yeah, this is kind of a joke, but it's not really a joke,
Yeah, no, but seriously, I think, look, right now, NVIDIA has a huge lead in the graphics performance that they are developing. Intel is working very hard to also catch up, and at some point, the graphics will become good enough that Intel is providing, and so there's no doubt NVIDIA will be ahead. But once it becomes good enough, your car can go 300 miles an hour if the speed limit is 65. That's good enough. So the other part, which I really believe, the hardest part right now, the way I look at it, is content creation. You take these designers, and they're amazingly talented, and they spend hours designing the content. And like any other immersive, any other visual experience, you go to the parallel we can draw is from the publishing industry. It's not the publishing of the book, it's the writing of the book. You go to the television industry or the movie industry, it's the content creation, not the technology itself. The technology, after a while, is mostly stabilized and standardized. So I think the focus in the short term, I think the companies that will try. So, and every company, so what does Facebook really want? What Facebook wants is to have an immersive experience where you and your friends, sitting in your respective living rooms, can go watch a movie together in the cinema hall, where a voice comes from the right, and there's your friend Joe on the right, and your friend Shirley on the left, and they are talking, and you feel like you are there. I'm guessing, by the way, I have no idea what they want. I'm just guessing this is what they want. So for now, that is one push that is coming is social VR. VR amongst groups of people who are coming together and enjoying experience together that they otherwise would not have. The other one is this whole augmentation where the world around us would be filled with information. Initially, it would be static. So because alignment is going to be simple. So street signs and so on would be the first ones, followed by the dynamics, where things are floating above people's heads, which are much harder for now. And then, of course, the other thing that all the hardware developers are focused, the hardware glasses developers are focused on, is they all have a dream. The dream is, can I please have an app store? And I mean, this is what they all want. They want the app store on their hardware device, because that is what they believe is the path to the future app store market. All the cars, all the autonomous cars, everybody who's building autonomous car believes that they will have your undivided attention while the car drives itself. And they are going to put screens all over the car, and they believe they will have their app store. It's not clear where the future, and of course, AT&T and Verizon and Comcast believe these guys will not have the app store. We are the ones who control the airwaves. We will have the app store. So they all want app stores. But ultimately, the real revenues, I believe, will come from what is on the app store. Not who owns the app store, but what is being served on the app store. And that's where the content creation and content services come in.
So I think we have time for one more question.
I'm sorry I went on too long.
So I have a question about the security implications. So if you're talking about down the road virtual reality that you interact with on a daily basis, if it's in your glasses and you see ads or things for stores or your news feed, how does that, and people like react with them and rely on them, what are the security implications for that going forward if something were to go wrong or someone got into that network and changed the reality that people see?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to need much, much higher security. I mean, if you think about Facebook and the rise of fake news, the rise of fake reality is a lot more alarming. If you could just have, things look, especially when you go to like way down the road in a world sort of like what Amitabh touched on, where augmented reality is truly indistinguishable from reality. Yes, you're going to need fairly, and probably it's going to come down to some sort of app store or walled garden, unfortunately, to begin with, I think, because otherwise it's just going to be too much to manage.
Yeah, I would add to that, not only from a security perspective, but what's happening to the brain if you become dependent on this information that's streaming and all of a sudden it's gone. You depend on this information to, this person's name and that person's name and this person's name, and all of a sudden that's gone. Oh my God, I don't know anybody's name. So there's a dependence issue as well.
So a long time ago, there was a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, where they said the answer to everything is 42 or something. So these days, anytime somebody brings up security, if you answer blockchain, it responds to everything.
Isn't that blockchain?
Just a blockchain.
All right. Oh, and actually we have time for one more. So I think Matt.
Just add blockchain.
Thank you. I had a question more about, I guess, what happens when there's a glitch in the virtual reality. So what if doctors are using these apps or what, humans make mistakes, what's going to happen from the computer malfunctioning? And so I guess if you could talk about the safeguards that are in place or, what's being done to prevent that, that'd be cool. Thank you.
I think it's a great liability right there, and what if it's in the middle of surgery and the server goes down? We're on hold for a little while. We're going to wait. So yeah, I mean, it's again, it goes back to that whole dependence on technology issue. Is what do we do if the technology fails and we can't compensate for that? And I agree. I think that's a big liability.
I mean, I would defer too, but I think there's probably an existing model of there's quite a bit of mission critical hardware and software already in that space that has redundant backups, backup generators, that kind of thing. I would think that this would just fit under roughly that same model. I mean, imagine there are plenty of pieces of equipment where if they malfunctioned or didn't work, there would be a huge
Consequence.
Issue. Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for the panel today. I want to thank you all for being here.
Thank you.